Hi, everybody. It's Ayla, Wife with a Purpose here, and welcome to my live stream today. I hope you guys are having a good week thus far. Just as a quick little housekeeping note, my family is moving furniture today, and one of the rooms that they're moving the furniture out of and into is right next door to me. So you might hear some bumping, thumping, even yelling, non-painful related, hopefully yelling and screaming. That's what that's about. So we're switching the boys' bedrooms around a little bit. So just as an aside. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about how to afford a large family, how to afford a large family on one income and on a modest income, because this is a question I get a lot. And I know that I've talked about this often on other podcasts and other shows that I've done. I've talked about it on Twitter, on Instagram, on a lot of social media, over on Gab. But this is something, it's a question that I get over and over and over again. And so I think it's something that I'm just going to address over and over and over again. I know I've got new subscribers to the channel. Maybe you haven't gone back and looked at all my videos. Obviously, nobody, probably even my most dedicated fans, follow me on every single social media thing that I ever post. And just so that to make sure this isn't a set topic or a subject you guys feel like I'm letting fall through the cracks, I will probably address this a lot. And I think that this is a really important topic to address because it's one that really gets people hung up. Particularly, in kind of your upper middle class or middle class, white, Christian, any of those communities, we tend to be people that plan ahead. We tend to be people that want to be very responsible, particularly with our lives and our childbearing. And so having a lot of kids and not really knowing how you're going to pay for that is something that holds people back. And it can give men in particular a lot of anxiety because obviously, that it's all on their shoulders. It's their responsibility. If they can't afford something, then they're the bad dad, they're the bad husband. And so it can really hold men back from wanting to have that second baby or that third baby or fourth baby. And I know that a lot of my friends and contemporaries, often kind of end up begging their husband for another child and, showing him how they can make it work financially and that sort of thing. And hopefully these tips and tricks can alleviate some of that anxiety. I don't expect it will alleviate all the anxiety that men feel around the burden of providing for a family, or not the burden, I should say. I know that you're grateful to provide, but the burden's the wrong word. What's the word I'm looking for? Just the anxiety over the duty and the responsibility. It's a lot on your shoulders. And so hopefully this helps, and hopefully for young girls and women maybe who've already had one or two kids but would like to have more, this will give you some ideas of how you can manage your household in a way that your husband feels really confident with going ahead and okaying a baby or more babies or whatever desire that you have in your heart for your family. And I would like to say that, number one, I am definitely, as most of you know, a very committed Christian, and I do believe the Lord will provide. I really and truly do. I do believe that if you have it in your heart to raise arrows, to shoot in the right direction for Christ, if you want to raise a biblical large family, He will provide. He will show you ways. And that was one of the ways that I went into the beginning of having a large family. And as most of you know, my husband doesn't exactly share all of my faith convictions. And so it was a lot harder for him, but he did eventually come around to a different line of thinking, and a line of thinking that helped him see the not how easy it is, because sometimes it's hard, but how important it is to have a family and to have a large family, and that it can be done. Right. And and a lot of his anxiety after it did take until the fourth baby, but a lot of his anxiety about worrying about how he was going to provide for his family really tapered off after the fourth baby. He really kind of, we got into a groove, and we knew that we would go through ups and downs, that we would go through easier times and hard times, but that we knew we could do it, particularly here in America. We live in such abundance that it's really so much easier to do in this day and time than it ever has been in human history. Okay, So, and I will be checking in with the chat periodically. So what I want you guys to do is, if you have questions for me in the chat, please, please, please try to tag me in it so that I will see it, because I'm gonna like go through a subject and then go back and check the chat. So we'll do it that way. Okay. So my first suggestion is you obviously, what type of job, right? Now, I'm not an economy expert, but from anecdotal wisdom of my life, just life experience, and then kind of seeing the changes I've seen in my lifetime and going through experiences I've gone through with my husband and my friends and family, you definitely want, obviously, a practical skill. It's, we have a market-based economy. You need to have something to bring to the marketplace that's of value, right? And so oftentimes that could be a degree, particularly if you want to go into teaching or engineering or something that requires an actual certification from an approved institution. Then, obviously you want to go that way. If you're not getting that sort of degree, I don't really recommend college, obviously. And this is something that a lot of people are saying nowadays, in that you should probably go to more like a trade school or acquire a skill, and that is going to make you a lot more money in the long run. And here's a good example. A lot of companies are desperate for welders. Welders is something that's in high demand. It's not actually an easy job. We kind of have this idea of like welders or jobs like that being run by like these Homer Simpsons kind of characters, right? But they're actually very, very skilled positions that not everybody can do. But if you have, if you're healthy and you're fairly smart and you are dedicated, you could learn to do it. The other thing that goes along with that for the women's side of it is you need to be willing to live where your husband can get work. So a lot of things that pay really well are in places that you might not necessarily love living as a woman, because they're a little bit more socially isolated. So some of these jobs where, that are out in the middle of North Dakota or South Dakota, or like, places like that where maybe it's a mining job, or an oil rig sort of position, or something like welding. A lot of these factories aren't in places that have, all these wonderful things that women would want from your life. Like, depending on what kind of woman you are, you might want the mall, you might want a lot of social groups, you might want a lot of homeschool groups, moms groups, tiny tots, tumbling classes, things like that. So you might need to be willing to give up some of that in order to, or at least give up being able to choose from a large variety of social interactions and a large variety of coffee shops and places to hang out, in exchange for living somewhere where your husband can make, $80,000 a year or whatever it is. Okay. So you also want to be looking towards a job that does not look like it's, easily automated. Now, obviously, we can't predict the future. I think, when I was a child, I never would have guessed that phones, would have become what they are. When my dad was one of the first people to have a cell phone because his job required it. Well, his job bought it for him and said, you have to have this. And it was one of those big brick things with the big antenna. It was really clunky, hardly ever worked, and really annoying. And so we never could have guessed that, in the future we were going to have like, Netflix on demand, instant TV shows and movies and stuff like on our phone, the internet on our phone. It just, so we kind of don't know where things are going. A lot of people thought, you remember Back to the Future, the second one, when they were predicting the future, and some of the things they got right and some they got wrong. And they kind of thought it was going to be the TV, right? That you would do FaceTime and stuff like through the TV, and not really computers or phones. So, even when they get kind of close, they're off. So you don't always know what's going to be coming around the bend, and anything can change any minute. But stay reading about that as a man. Look into what people like Elon Musk and things like that are doing. Look at the trends and kind of try to get an idea. So obviously, I would not recommend somebody go into the marketplace right now, thinking that they're going to do trucking. I love truckers, by the way. This is not a knock on truckers. You guys are awesome. but it's a job that's really under threat because as soon as Google perfects that automated car, you guys are going to really be easily replaced in that respect. And I actually hope that doesn't happen. But I would not recommend anybody basing becoming a taxi driver, basing your income on any of that, pizza delivery boy, like any of that. And of course, very few of you, I would imagine, are going to choose the career like Fry Phillips from Futurama of delivery boy, but I wouldn't recommend it. So you want to be just trying to look ahead as best you can, and no one's perfect and you might make mistakes, but just try to stay up on what does it look like is going to become automated, and what does it look like there's going to be more demand for. So for an example, I would say that from my perspective, my husband's perspective, we really can see the medical field exploding. And this is one of the things I've kind of talked about on my channel before, is that as we get better at medicine, the more medicine we need. And the best example of that is diabetes, right? So people with diabetes used to die before they had children. And so very rarely did they ever pass on that gene. So you would get diabetes in your early teens, and it was a painful, excruciating, horrible death. And usually died by the time you were 16. You didn't leave behind any family, any, children, offspring. So very few people had diabetes, the genetic diabetes, not the weight related diabetes, right? But now, because we can basically manage diabetes through insulin and medications, which is a wonderful thing, but the downside of that is that now people with diabetes do go on to have children. And so, it goes from almost nobody having diabetes to I think it's 6% of the population now. And that's only going to keep increasing as we share genes between people, right? So the medical field is, the more we are able to improve our lives, the more we're going to have to manage them through medicine. So that's something that I can see personally in the future being still a really big industry and a booming industry. I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to take a drink of water. This is water. It has a little spout that looks like a vapor thing, and everybody always thinks I'm vaping. I'm actually going to take the lid off because people are this ridiculous. I take a drink of water like that. Because even when I say something about the water bottle, people are so like, you're vaping. I'm like, no, I'm not. Okay, so let me pop over to the chat really quick. And I'm going to scroll from the beginning. Good to see some of you guys here today. All right. We have tried making friends, and so Sandinsky Lawson says, we have tried making friends and have no family in the Northeast, but it's almost impossible. I think the South or the West is the way to go. I'm definitely a fan of the South, as most of you know. That's where a lot of my family is from. And I'm a fan of the South. I grew up in the West. My husband's from Utah. I grew up in Nevada. We lived in California. I even lived in Idaho very briefly at one point. So, and I've been all over the West. The West is gorgeous. The only downside, there's two downsides to the West as far as finding out, where you want to live. The two downsides are that immigration and liberal policies are really rapidly taking it over. Not just in California, but Idaho and Utah is going through the same problem. Housing prices are really through the roof as compared to a lot of other places in America. A lot of Californians are fleeing, and they're fleeing to Idaho, they're fleeing to Utah, they're fleeing to Texas. They're driving up the home prices. So there's that. Also, if you're kind of a self-sufficiency person, the West can be a lot more difficult. If you're a hunter, it's probably Wyoming, Montana, and stuff like that, I would imagine is good. I'm not a hunter, so I don't know. Neither is my husband. But I would imagine that's pretty good. But if you're really into gardening, the West can also be really difficult. So basically the only good gardening areas, is kind of like Central Valley, California. And even then they have to pump in a lot of water. Whereas at least in the Southeast, you just, you can throw the seeds in the ground and you don't even have to have an irrigation system, right? So it depends on what's important to you, long term, as far as what you might want to do. And yeah, it's hard to make friends out there these days, and I agree, especially for moms. And I think that that's a big reason why a lot of us have turned to the internet. And of course, there's pluses and minuses to that. But I think one of the things that we can do in the situation where, you know, your husband has a job and you have to live somewhere that maybe doesn't have a huge social variety, and as far as making friends, is look at it as an opportunity to work on your humility. You know, there's definitely been times when I've been with friends and I really disagree with them about something. It could be politics, it could be religion, it could be something else. And as long as they're good people and they're good influences on my kids, and their kids are good kids, you know, I just don't talk about it. I don't fight about it. I try, if it comes up, I try to be evasive. I try to change the subject. I try to find the points we can agree on. And that can be difficult, but I really look at it as an opportunity to grow my own personal character and try to get along with a wide variety of people. And that's kind of how it used to be, you know, like it didn't. In that the 1950s, let's take, for example, you were going to be friends with a lot of your neighbors. You weren't really going to be able to travel a lot. Families had one car. Dad was using it for work. Mom was usually home. And you had kind of the ladies in your neighborhood and the ladies in your church. And if you didn't get along with them, then you're kind of out of luck. So you needed to. And it creates a little bit of social conformity, which was a good thing in the 50s, because obviously the social standards were better. The social standards right now are garbage and evil. So you'll have to maintain a balance of practicing your humility and trying to get along with a wide variety of people, even though you don't agree, as well as keeping your own standards for what you feel is important, living a godly life, trying to keep godly influences around your children, as well as being a good example, right? So that is a challenge work-wise from us ladies. And then also, I would also recommend, the Duggars are a huge inspiration for me. They're the family with 19 children, and not that they've done everything perfect in their lives. I would never claim that. And not that all, 20 some members of that family are perfect, or not. But one of the things that I noticed that the Duggars did is they really wanted to cultivate good family relationships. So when they found a family that they get along with really well, they would go to great measures in order to make connections with that family. So for example, they lived, I believe it was like 8 hours away from their best friends, which was the Bates family. And the Bates also have their own television show on now on, I think it's the Up Network or whatever. I get it online, so I don't know what the TV thing is. But anyways, they also have 19 kids, and they were a similar like religious background and whatnot. And so they would, a couple times a year, they would go ahead and make that effort to go and visit the Bates family, even though it was a big drive for them to do that. So that is definitely something, and that's something that you could commit to. If you could find a family that's like 4 or 5 hours away or something like that, just say, this is a priority for us, that we cultivate good relationships with people, like-minded people, and we're willing to travel once or twice a year, or just to FaceTime, to have Skype parties, things like that. Okay. So, all right. So, and here's another Duggar. Well, we'll get into another Duggar subject right now, and that is going to be having no debt. Now, that is difficult, and I know it's difficult, and this is not something that I've been perfect about in my life. I did take out student loans to get my master's degree, and I really wish that I had it. I was young and I didn't know better yet, but my husband and I, pretty early on in our relationship, made a commitment that we didn't want to take out additional debt. And when I say student loans, actually, comparatively speaking, it's one of those things. It seemed like a lot of student loans at the time that I did it, but now, compared to what people take out in student loans, my student loans feel really small. They are really small. But at any rate, hold on, I'm going to take a drink of water. Okay. So try not to take out debt. So I'll give you an example of how the Duggar family did this, because I just think it's a really good example. So when they were first together, they decided, no debt at all. Because the Bible says, don't owe a man anything. And we all, in our movement, we kind of know who's behind debt and usury and things like that, and how they use it to take advantage of people. And so it's definitely something that you want to avoid at all costs. So try to go to school. Well, obviously, okay, let me get back to the Duggar story because this is good. Okay, so when the Duggars first got married and they were first starting out having their children, they were in a rental, and he worked 2 jobs, like 2 full-time jobs for a couple of years. Okay, so he really put in the hours and she really put in the hours because they were having, you know, baby after baby after baby, and she was at home with them all the time. And he was working, I forget what his day job was, but then he also stocked at a grocery store at night. And they managed to put aside $20,000 and buy a very small, modest home. I think this would have been like the late 80s, early 90s. But they bought it outright, and it was the home that they raised a lot of their oldest children in for the majority of the time. So I think it was like a 2 or 3 bedroom home. It was like totally a normal, small, not fancy house at all. It was made of like that cinder block brick that's like painted, and it just wasn't very attractive at all. But if you go back and you look online at some of their very first specials that they ever did on the TLC network, they still lived in that house. So very, very small. And they just made do. They went to thrift shops and got bunk beds and bought, even went to junkyards and got pieces for bunk beds and put bunk beds together, and had a boys' room and a girls' room and mom and dad's room. And they just made do. And the laundry was even one of those ones that's in the hallway. And Michelle was doing laundry like all day long. And she put in a lot of tireless hours and effort right at the beginning of their relationship. And so did he. And they were able to buy that house, and then they were able to save up. And so that by the time, I think their oldest he was kind of an older teenager. I want to say about 17 or so. They were able to buy a piece of property and then build their own house on it. And then that's the house they have now. And a lot of people like to say it's because of the TV show, and it actually wasn't. The reason they didn't buy a house sooner, land sooner than that, is they actually made a couple real estate investments in between with some of the money. And they rented out some of their real estate to cell phone towers. And that's still where they get the bulk of their money. They've never gotten the bulk of their money from their TV show. The bulk of their money comes from renting out to cell phone towers. But they also had some business rentals and things like that they, some places where they rented to businesses and little mini marts and things. And so they did that. So real estate is always a good investment. And then after they had done those investments and they had more income coming in, they built on that, and they bought, I think they have like a 20-acre piece of land, or something around that. And then they bought a house kit, and they actually bought 2 kits for 2 houses, so it'd be big enough for their whole family. And then they had friends and family and a lot of their boys, because they had tons and tons of boys, helped them put that house together. And so they did it almost entirely on their own with no help from the show or anything else. Once they had their show was kind of like really getting more popular, the TLC bought them some furniture I think they bought like the furniture, and like their piano and their harp or something. But for the most part, like 90% of what they had, they did entirely without the show. So that's kind of how they did it. And so I would always say, all of us, get money sometimes from things, maybe an accident settlement, or you have a grandmother who passes away and you get $10,000 or something, whatever it is. Invest that, don't spend it. Don't go to Disneyland on it. Don't do those sorts of things. Invest it in the future. And if you really take that first 10 to 15 years of your marriage, and I know that sounds like a long time for young people, but it will go by fast. If you take that first little bit, to really put your money somewhere good, then you can just continue to build on that. And if you look at the Duggars now, like they own their property outright, they own their house outright, they own all their cars outright. They have several properties they own entirely that they rent out for income. So they're quite set. Like even without their TV show, they're not hurting for money. They're not super rich either. Obviously, they have 19 kids, but they are doing quite well for themselves and able to support themselves and have no debt. And so that's, just if you look forward, like in 20 years, 25 years, it's really going to pay off if you really put in that hard work those first 10 years. Don't take a lot of breaks. Don't take a lot of vacations. Don't spoil yourself. Like, don't buy that magazine at the checkout. Don't buy that Starbucks coffee. Skip all of those things. Put that money away, and it will really make a difference. My husband and I were in our 30s before we purchased our first home, and there's a reason for that, right? So, that's what I recommend. Okay, so let me go through the chat here and see if we've got any other tags. Okay. Oh, thanks, Ayla. You definitely walk the walk. You're beautiful. Thank you, Kata. So try to tag me if you want me to see what you're writing. Oh, spoiler alert says, don't forget to take a look at the Ozarks, northern Arkansas, southern Missouri area. Very white, very religious, year-round growing season. Definitely. The humidity down there is a little bit more than you would get in some other parts of the Southeast, but absolutely Missouri and Arkansas is a thriving paradise for people with a lot of our values. Most of the people that I know that are in the traditionalist movements, like the stay-at-home daughter movement, or the Christians who are really self-sufficient and really into gardening, things like that, they live in Arkansas or Missouri. The Duggar family I was just talking about a minute ago, they live in Arkansas, and Teton, I don't know how it's pronounced, Teton or whatever. There's also, if you're a Catholic, by the way, this is just funny because I happen to have stumbled across this recently. There is a blog, I believe it's called Catholic in the Ozarks, and he recently did a blog, you can probably Google it, where it was like the top 5, I think it was, Ozark towns for traditionalist Catholics. So even if you're not a traditionalist Catholic, good area to be in anyways, because they have some good traditional values there. But it was places where they have a Catholic community that's celebrating Latin Mass, and that they have kind of a thriving community there in the Ozarks. So I'm glad you mentioned that, spoiler, because that's a really good recommendation. Okay. Oh, Greg C says, unrelated to the topic of the video, are you back on Twitter, or is that an impersonator? It depends on which account you're talking about. I do have impersonators on Twitter. My account is at Ayla Wife. At Ayla Wife. It was Historical Lydia for a little while because that just was my backup. And I kept it private for since December when I lost my A Purposeful Wife account. And then I kept it private for months and months. And then when I started doing like writing for news, at first I was writing for Squawker, and now I'm with newscentralmedia.net. I wanted a way to share my articles online. And so I went ahead and opened up my account, and then I changed the handle because it's just kind of confusing. It was just a random name for my backup account before. So at Ayla Wife is my only account. Lord of the Edge says, what about Alaska? I'm thinking of moving there. My husband and I have also thrown around Alaska. I think it kind of depends. You're definitely going to get some really good real estate there as far as like low cost. It's definitely good for self-sufficiency, particularly if you're into hunting, but you can also do, some pretty darn good gardening there. If you're anywhere near the cities though, the cities, just from my research, are very inner city. They're high population. How do I say this? They have a lot of inner city element going on up there near Juneau and Anchorage, or in Juneau and Anchorage. So if it depends on what you do, like and what you like. If you like to be really isolated and you work from home, let's say, then that could be a really wonderful choice, because you could probably pick up a cabin and a piece of land for like, pennies, and you could work from it with a really good, work out of it with a really good internet connection. But if you have a wife or kids that really want a more thriving social life, I probably would not recommend that. So, it kind of depends on what you want, I forgot I was going to undo the lid, and then I went and took the sip without the lid. Without taking off the lid. So what was I saying? Yeah. So if you have, now I'm the kind of wife, I do love to be social, but I don't have to be. I'm really flexible that way. So I would do well in Alaska on a piece of land. And most of my kids would too. I have 2 super social kids, and I have 4 kids that's like, they would just love it if they just be little hermits in a cave and like just read a book. They would just love it. And one of my super social kids is a lot like me. Like, she can go either way. So at any rate, depends on your family. Let's see. Yeah, Southern Belle says, as long as you can provide a home, food, clothing, and lots of love for children, you should be fine. Kids are much better off if they are not spoiled. No cell phones and game consoles needed. 100%. I completely agree with you, Southern Belle. Not only does it make it so that you can raise a large family if you're cutting out all that extra garbage, but it makes better kids to not be spoiled. And sometimes my kids will say, well, our cousins got to have blah, 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 or whatever. And I'll say, and you get to have 5 best friends, right? Because you have siblings. And we would talk about it, your siblings are a gift. And they don't understand it now. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Right now, I think they would prefer an Xbox from time to time. But I know 100%, as any of us with any adult wisdom knows, when they get older, they are really going to treasure those siblings and their family and their simple childhood that left them lots of time to play with inchworms and pick apples off trees and skip rocks at the creek. And they're really going to look back on it with a lot of love. So Clara says, what about Kentucky or Tennessee? Friends are looking there. We're looking at Idaho. Any tips about Idaho? I have very good friends that recently left Idaho. I lived in Idaho briefly, almost 20 years ago. And I also lived in Utah. Like I said, Idaho is absolutely being flooded right now with Californians, and the housing prices are going up, 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 up. I don't recommend Idaho in general. That isn't to say that you might not find a really nice place that you like, and that's fine, and you should do your own research. For what I want out of my life, I would not currently move to Idaho, although Idaho, there's crows outside my window. It's so cool. Idaho is gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, especially up near Coeur d'Alene. It's breathtaking. So that's basically what I would say. Of all the places in the West, though, Idaho is going to be one of your better bets if you want to be in the West. But like I said, I'm really afraid about immigration in Idaho right now, both refugees and from Latin America. I'm also really worried about the SJW element, particularly coming from California. Not only people coming from California, but the ideas. There is a huge cultural exchange happening right now between particularly Northern California and Idaho. That a lot of people, I lived in Northern California for a while, and I have a lot of friends in Idaho and people that have left Idaho. And so I kind of have seen this just anecdotally in my life in the past 10 years. There's a huge amount of cultural exchange that's happening, and it's polluting. This culture coming out of California is polluting Idaho. Kentucky and Tennessee, though, I highly recommend. Definitely, there are very impoverished areas of Kentucky that, unless you work from home, are not going to be a good bet for you. But in general, most of what I've seen of Kentucky is wonderful. Also, I would say the same of Tennessee. Definitely, I would probably avoid like the Nashville and Memphis areas, just as a rule of thumb. And obviously, always when you're looking to move, check, you want to check the crime stats. You want to check, and you want to see where things are headed. You go to greatschools.com. I think it's .com. It might be .org. Go to Great Schools online. Look at the schools in the area. Look at the kindergartners and look at the demographics. Okay. Then you're going to know where that town is headed. Not what it is now, not what the dying population is. Where is that town headed? And that can give you a good idea. Somebody else said, is Tennessee good? Yes, I recommend Tennessee. I know people that are there, and I recommend it. Californians are a virus. Somebody says, when you lived in Idaho, did you consider going to an Aryan Nations conference? I have nothing to do with those people now, and I didn't know those people then. I was actually a liberal. This was 20 years ago when I lived up in Idaho. I lived in Boise for a little bit. Julie says Tennessee is beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful areas around Tennessee, and Tennessee is still very, for the most part, very family friendly. They're really still very rooted in their Christianity and their conservative values. So Somebody says, "Why? What do I think of Wyoming?" I don't know a lot about Wyoming. I just don't. You'd have to ask somebody else. I know that I've researched it, and the areas that I would have considered living in Wyoming that met my personal criteria were being dumped with refugees. So that's just why my husband and I have, we kind of ruled out Wyoming. Okay, so let's move on. All right, investments as well as savings. So this is a mistake, I want to say, that my husband and I made when we were first starting out. Definitely you don't want to go into debt, so you want to have some savings. But like I was telling with the Duggar story, how they bought a house and then saved up and bought a bigger house. They bought a house that could function for their family. Then they invested the money in real estate. Then they bought a bigger house. And that's we did it the wrong way. My husband and I were really into saving money. And so we would just save, squirrel it away. But you want your money working for you. So it's actually better to invest that. And I actually wish that we had done a little bit more of that 5 and 10 years ago, but as an aside. So learn from my mistake. The second thing you want to do after you've got some secure housing for your family is you want to invest a little bit before you then upgrade your housing. Okay. And so investments, I am nowhere near an economic expert at all. But if you look at the Duggar family, if you look at the Trumps, people like that who have done well with their money for their position that they're in, real estate. You really cannot go too wrong with real estate unless it's overinflated. And you can usually get it. Most people have a gut feeling about what a place is worth. And, back in the 10 years ago, when the real estate market crashed, we all had a gut feeling that, where we were living at the time up in Northern California, in this really small town where there were hardly any jobs, a really simple starter home was going for like $400,000. And my husband and I chose not to buy at that time because we were like, this just doesn't look like this can go on like this. And a lot of friends of ours waited a few years and the market stayed that high. And they said, well, I guess this is just what it is now. This is just the new normal. And my husband and I said, no, we're going to wait a little longer. We didn't buy, thank goodness, because we came kind of close a few times to trying to take out debt to buy a house during that time, just because we wanted to own our own home so much. I mean, obviously there's an emotional element to it, but I'm really glad that we were able to follow our gut. So you kind of have a gut feeling when things are overinflated, even if you're not a housing expert. Kind of go with your gut. Don't buy it at an overinflated price. Get it for a decent price that you're not going to lose too much on if the market dips a bit. But definitely invest in real estate. Drinking it the wrong way again. Okay, next, homemade food. So this is for the ladies, but this is also for the men. So men, I know it's super tempting. You work a hard job and you just want to go out to lunch, right? Like you're working construction or whatever. You don't want to bring your lunch. You don't want to eat a peanut butter and jelly. You want to be able to go, right, and go get a Chick-fil-A. I know you do. I know I do when I was working. Bring your lunch and bring your coffee. Okay. And wives, make your husband food. Okay. Always have that available. Husbands and children, if your children go to school, if they go to private school or public school, obviously you don't even want your kids eating the food at public school, but make the lunch, put in the time. Go online. Men, you can do this too. If you're not married yet, you want to save money, you got to make your own lunch. Go online, go on Pinterest, whatever. And there's so many great just lunch box ideas for kids and grown-ups. You can make it really fun. You can make it really cheap. Okay, so that's number one, because people just piss away their money on lunches. We had some roommates years and years ago when my husband and I were first married. His best friend and his wife lived with us. And I love them, love him. He was a hard worker, such a hard worker. And he just worked his butt off. But what he loved to do was eat out. So he would eat his lunch out every day. He would have a couple of Starbucks every day. And then his wife didn't love cooking. So they would eat out dinner almost every night. And that was 3/4 of his paycheck. It was like insane. It was so much money. And he was a manager where he was working. And I was like, oh my gosh, you need to cook at home. So cook at home, cook in bulk. So when you're first starting out, cook at home. And then when you've got kids, obviously, and by the time you have the kids, you'll kind of have figured this out already, wives, but cook in bulk, homemade food. Don't go out to eat. So my family does go out to eat every now and again. There's 2 times we go out to eat. A very special occasion. Not even birthdays. I usually make a homemade meal for the birthdays. The kids get to pick what they want, homemade pizza or ham and cheese sliders or whatever they want, but I make it at home. Go out. My husband and I go out for our anniversary. And as a whole family, we very, very rarely go out, even on like vacations, basically. Or if we get stuck, sometimes when you're out running errands and like you're starving, it's 2:00, then we'll go to something cheap. But like run through a drive-through. We try not to do that a lot, obviously, because it's not good for us either. It's not good for our wallet. It's also not good for our bodies. But every now and again, you all know, you're an hour still from home or whatever, and you're just really hungry. Everybody's really hungry. The kids are cranky. But even then, I highly recommend keeping snacks in the car. I do that. I just get, crackers, peanut butter crackers, and I keep them in the car. So that can help too. And that has saved us money. But definitely, so you want to buy in bulk. You want to buy flours. Ladies, you want to know how to make bread. You want to know how to make 30-minute dinner rolls. Those are my favorite, easy, quick, cheap meal option. You can throw those together with just about anything else. Literally takes 30 minutes from start to finish. They're great. And so peas, lentils, beans, you can put a little baking soda in there if they upset your stomach. So cook your dry beans with a little baking soda. Really takes the gas out of the beans. Learn to love beans, learn to love bean soups, bean salads. Just experiment, especially when you're still young. Experiment with different kinds of beans, figure out what you like, different kinds of grains. You can do even the fancier ones like the quinoas and whatever, but just some simple rice, oatmeal. I'm a huge fan of oatmeal. Oatmeal is like a European soul food. Okay. Like oatmeal has got our people through everything, right? And you can also make muesli, like a Swiss muesli cereal out of your own oatmeal. Just buy the stuff bulk, buy some bulk raisins, buy some bulk oats, and some bulk sliced almonds or something like that. If you want a quick breakfast cereal, that's not expensive. And throw that together, get one of those reusable plastic containers that's like a cereal box and throw that together. And I've done that for my kids. It's so much healthier. It's so much more delicious. And it's so much cheaper. All right. I'm seeing the chat here. I don't know if this is directed at me because it's just a general question. If you have a question for me, please try to tag me at Wife with a Purpose. But if this is directed at me, Ruthless Noodle says, do you drink alcohol? And no, I don't. I don't drink alcohol. So, and that is something also I would recommend, highly recommend. If you're not doing it already, drink either no or very little alcohol and do not smoke, right? Because those are just, again, they're just ways to piss away your money. Fancy coffees, tons of soda pop, even though soda pops are $1 for like a big gulp. But if you're drinking like 5 of those a day, guys, that starts to add up, and not only for your health as well, which is going to cost you money down the road, but even in the short term. And, eating out and alcohol. Those are all going to really just be drains. Now, that's not to say that if you think drinking alcohol is okay, that you don't, have a glass of red wine every now and again or whatever, or maybe it makes a great gift. Like maybe your husband really enjoys scotch or something like that. Then that's a great time for it to be, a present. Julie says, make your own fancy coffee. I completely agree. There is really the only time, and I'll tell you, I have blood sugar problems. And so every now and again, if I eat the wrong thing when I'm out, I do have to go grab a coffee somewhere it helps regulate my blood sugar. It's pretty rare, but there are times that I'll grab a coffee. And when I do, though, I go to McDonald's because it's like $1. You go through the drive-thru, it's $1. You don't need, and it's perfectly fine. And I'm drinking it medicinally pretty much anyways, but you don't need a fancy coffee from Starbucks, and I know the feeling of getting a coffee is kind of fun. You go out for coffee, but really, like, McDonald's coffee is just as good as Starbucks. So if you really, really want to go out and get a coffee, go get $1 coffee. Let's see. Greg C says, do you worry about the pastor effect of being too strong on one side of views and kids slingshotting to the other? 100%. I worry about that. I don't know the solution for that other than I try to teach my children why we make the choices we do. And I expect them 100% to make their own choices once they leave my home. And I don't worry about it. Like, I understand that while they're under my care, I have to make certain choices for them. But once they're on their own, that's between them and God. And I tell them that, it's between your heart and God. And you're going to do what you feel is right. And so again, the Duggar family is a great example of this. So the Duggar family has very strict standards for their kids. They have to court. They're not allowed to have premarital sex. Obviously, they're not kissing or holding hands even before they're married or engaged. The girls are wearing skirts. They're having long hair. They don't pierce their ears. They don't watch TV pretty much at all. So now that I think there's like 10 Duggar kids maybe maybe not 10. 6, 7, 8, I don't know, kids that are often married, and some of them have kids of their own. And we're kind of seeing, and the Bates family as well, kind of seeing, well, how do they express that? Well, some of them have pierced their ears. Even one, she has a nose piercing, but she's incredibly conservative otherwise. I mean, very conservative. Actually, her husband came under incredible fire for being against transgenderism. Most of them are making pretty good choices. Some of them are watching TV, but they're watching stuff like Peppa the Pig or Winnie the Pooh. So my kids are going to make their own choices, right? They're going to make their own choices about their lives. And I just hope that the way that the Duggar kids have still stuck to the spirit of what their parents were teaching them, if not the letter of the law, that's what I want for my kids. I want my kids to stick to the spirit of what I'm teaching them, right? So I have a couple of tattoos I got when I was young, and I really hate them, and I really regret them for the most part. My oldest son, who's going to be 15 tomorrow, really wants a tattoo, right? So I think one of the first things he's going to do when he's 18 is get like an American flag tattooed, but that's the thing. Like, I can look at that and go, but he wants an American flag tattoo, right? So it's still within the spirit of what I would have for my kids, even if it's not the exact choice that I would make for them. And maybe he'll change his mind, and maybe he won't, but that's between them and God. They need to live their lives. It's not my life. And so that's really important to remember as a parent. We've got another one here. Ayla, where to meet other trad people. That's a little off topic, but I'll try to cover it quickly. Definitely, you want to meet them online. You want to look for people online and then look for people in your regional area. That's going to be your best bet. That's where I've met most of my trad people. But of course, church is another great one. You want to find the most conservative church you can. Get out there, meet people, go to coffee hour, go to donut time, go to whatever they have, meetings at your church, Bible studies, whatever they've got. Other trad places, definitely go to homeschool events. Even if you just had a baby, even if you just got married and don't have kids yet, even if you just want to homeschool your kids, especially if you're a woman, they totally will welcome you at homeschool events. Before I had kids, I would go to Le Leche League, which is the breastfeeding support group. And they loved it. I would volunteer for them. I would do all this stuff. I could do all these things for them because I didn't have kids yet. And I got to glean all this knowledge from them. And I got to meet lots of traditional people that hugely influenced my life. Like hugely, hugely, hugely. Like I would not be a Christian, I don't think, without them and without their influence. So even if you don't even have kids yet, look at those kind of organizations that you can support financially, you can support with your volunteer time, and you will glean so much information. You'll make lifelong friendships. It's wonderful. Okay, I always worried about these things with my kids, so I had to let in some outside influence, but I made my moderation not obvious to them. Oh, says Greg C. See, I do a similar thing, but I do make my moderation a little obvious. I do say, like, this is what, I want my kids to be able to have some similarities between themselves and their peers. I don't want them to feel like complete pariahs and they don't know what's going on, right? So I do allow them to watch, like if there is a TV show that's, on Amazon or we don't have Netflix, but like on Amazon or Hulu or something, and it's okay. Like I will let them watch a little bit every now and again, so that, and movies the same way. They watched the first Mission Impossible recently. Some of my older kids. So I do like to give them a little, cultural reference. I don't want them to be complete weirdos, right? But I do explain to them like why, like this show is okay and this is why. And my older son has told me that he wants to binge watch the entire series of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like he's got these plans for when he gets out of our house. He's getting an American flag tattoo. Wants to binge watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Futurama, because we've let my kids have kind of accidentally, for the most part, seen some Futurama. I haven't really let them watch that. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we let them watch some select episodes that were okay. But yeah, other than that, so he knows about those shows, and so he wants to binge watch them when he gets older. So, but yeah, giving them a little bit of cultural references and just I just explain to them why I do what I do. And I want them to be able to follow the Holy Spirit. That's important to me. Let's see. The next, say natural health care. So when you're thinking about a job, when you're thinking about a trade to get into as a man, you definitely want to lean towards something that might provide health care. If you have a large family, that is going to be your biggest expense, is health insurance, if you choose to have health insurance. Okay. Especially if you have to buy it on your own. So if I was to buy a policy completely on our own for health insurance right now for my family, and we have no prior, really hardly any prior medical stuff, nothing major, it would cost us about $1,200 a month, and we'd have like a $20,000 deductible. So it would just be insane and not worth it at all. So if you want to have a job, maybe teaching something like that might pay lower, but you've got your healthcare covered. And I don't know a lot. I've heard that the healthcare that teachers used to get was really great, and now it's not so great anymore. So definitely do your research, where you are, what state you want to teach in, that sort of thing. But that's definitely something that you want to think about. And if you don't have health insurance, which for large families, it's typically better, like literally with some of the deductibles and copays, I've worked it out. My mother went through cancer treatment. She went through incredibly expensive cancer treatment prior to her death. And I've actually sat down and looked at some of those costs. And like every 5 years, one of my family members could get like cancer and go through the most expensive treatments like my mother did. And it would still be cheaper to cash pay than to pay some of these rates that these companies want to charge me out of pocket. So, and then they always fight you in the end anyways about not wanting to pay it. Most people that filed bankruptcy for medical bills had insurance. In fact, I know a family and they have almost no debt, and the only debt they do have is a little bit of medical bills, and they had insurance. Whereas, and you don't have insurance, you can negotiate those prices down. If you're cash pay, you're going to, number one, you're going to pay about half. So if you go to a hospital, you're going to pay about half, if not a lot less, in America. So obviously this is for America. You can also travel. There are some states. So to get medical procedure that I needed when I lived in California was $5,000, was totally out of her reach. When we moved to Utah, that same procedure in a much better setup, more comfortable place, nicer place, was $1,500. So $5,000 compared to $1,500. And so definitely you want to take that into account. Cash pay, find a doctor that does cash pay. Cash pay doctors will be cheap. We have a wonderful family medical doctor who's cash pay. And then he also has most of your regular prescriptions that you might need there at his office. And so, for example, if I was on the insurance I used to have, my migraine medicine would cost $11 a pill. And through the cash pay doctor, the exact same, not even the generic, the exact same medicine cost me less than $1 a pill. And obviously you want to not be taking a lot of prescriptions or whatever. That's, some people have to. I have to take migraine medicine to function. I tried all the natural stuff. You guys have heard me talk about that before. I suffered for a decade on all the natural stuff and decided as a mother of 6, I just need to take a pill every now and again. And that's okay. But anyway, and you, of course, the healthier you are, the better you're eating, keep your weight down. You're not going to need to see the doctor as much. You're not going to need as much medication. But some things are just simply genetic and you can't avoid it no matter what you do. All right, let's see here. So the next thing you want to do is free and low cost entertainment. So this is another thing that eats up a lot of people's bills. A lot of people want to go on vacations. They want to stay in hotels. They want to eat out. They want to go to the movies. It's fun. I get it, but you got to find a different way to have fun. That's number one. Let's see. Somebody's tagged me here. Someone needs to hire you for radio. You are super duper awesome, says T. Lee Jones. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Back on what I was saying. Let me look here. We were on, free and low cost entertainment. So what you want to be doing is checking your local newspaper for like concerts in the park that are very, very inexpensive or free. Things that let in, the family, it's $10 for the whole family to get in. A lot of small towns have a lot of movies in the park during the summertime, where they'll put up a big screen. Everyone brings a picnic blanket and a snack and you go see a movie. And it's usually free or very low cost. You want to look for things like drive-in movie theaters. A lot of times you just pay by the car. Maybe it's $10 for the car to get in. And so you can pile your whole family in the car and get in for $10. You want to do things like go to the parks, use your parks, hiking trails, bike trails. You want to do those kinds of entertainment. It's better for you. You'll have happier kids, healthier kids. And it's much, much less expensive. Also, check your local library. Now, with your local library, you've got to be careful because obviously these are very liberal institutions. So you can't just drop your kids off and expect everything to be okay. You need to be providing some oversight. But definitely a lot of libraries have teen groups or teen hour or game days where they have, board games that they set out and have teens from the neighborhood come and play board games. Museums will quite often have free or half price days for families. A lot of amusement parks and things like that will have discounted tickets for residents, or they'll have days where if you buy in advance or this sort of thing, you can get it for half off. Be looking for things like that. Definitely our church community is usually our number one source of entertainment. So we're going to be doing a Boy Scouts or a similar scouting-like program through church, Bible studies for the kids, youth group for the kids. Youth group's going to be taking trips. Some of these expenses are either very, very little, or the church covers it, or they get group discount rates. Lots of great stuff like that. So you're going to want to change up, especially single people, for entertainment. They tend to go out. They tend to go to concerts. They tend to go out to eat. They tend to go to the movies, that sort of thing. So if you're wanting a big family, you're going to have to make a conscious effort to be entertained by different things. Okay. Because that's just going to eat up too much money. If you have a family of 6, you cannot go to the movie theater all the time. My family basically almost never goes to the movies. Maybe as a birthday gift, a child might want to take a couple friends to a movie. Or when we did live in a town at one point that had the $2 movie theater. So we loved that. And we did go to appropriate movies, Christian movies and things like that as they came there. But, and then we will occasionally, we went to see Ender's Game simply because, when it was in the theaters, because Orson Scott Card was getting such a, flack from the LGBT community because he was for traditional marriage, and they were boycotting the movie and all of this. So my husband and I said, you know what, it's for a good cause. We're just going to go and kind of show our support for Orson Scott Card and his beliefs and his conservative values because he's being actively boycotted. But that was, an exception. We typically don't go to movies and stuff like that. And then also you're not going to be able to have every child in like karate and soccer and piano lessons. Because number one, you're just flat out not going to have the time to take 6 children to that many events. And you're not going to be able to afford that many events. One of the things that you can do, however, that I've done is get together with some homeschool moms, some neighborhood moms, some moms from your church, and find out what skills do those moms have and what kind of things can you organize. So for a little while, some friends of ours, and we had organized a ballet class that we were doing out of my house a couple of years back. And so for a while we did, we had kids over we had some little girls over every week. We were teaching ballet, and then we had a Christmas performance. Again, that was at my house, but it was really, really sweet. And the kids had a great time, great memories, just as much as if they had gone to, a fancy ballet class somewhere. And so, there's things like that you can do. There's homeschool groups that organize like PE co-ops, like dads especially love to do kickball or soccer. Get together with friends and organize it on your own. And then basically what you just have is costs. Like maybe if they've got to buy 8 balls to play kickball or something like this, then every family chips in a couple dollars for the balls. And other than that, everybody volunteers their time, and it's really good. So I would say when it comes to extracurriculars, go with co-ops. You can also barter and exchange. So maybe if you know how to do ballet and your friend knows how to play violin, you can teach each other's children, something like that. All right. Let me check the chat here and see if we have any comments. Oh, what is your opinion of single fathers that are that way due to choosing surrogacy? Well, I'm not a fan of intentional single parenting. Obviously, there's going to be cases where if a child is in an orphanage, lingering in an orphanage, then having a father or just a mother is 1,000 times better than that. So there's obvious exceptions, but through adoption. But in general, I don't recommend intentionally bringing a child into the world knowing that they will never know one of their parents. So that's how I feel about that. Someone says movies suck now anyways. That's true. Oh, one of the movies that we did go to see was Angry Birds. That one was good. And we don't even play the game. Okay, so let's move on to our next one. Thrift shops, clearance racks, and discount days. So again, one of the other big expenses that you're going to have, particularly if you have boys, but even with girls, they're very hard on clothing. And then you're going to go through a lot of clothing. Keeping them in clothing is going to be a constant struggle, and pulling out all the ripped and stained things and replacing it with things that aren't. So if you're a woman and you can have some time before you start having kids or later to learn how to sew, that's wonderful. You can sew patches on knees. You can sew simple summer dresses, and they will hold up. I have always noticed that homemade stuff holds up almost always better than store-bought stuff these days, because store-bought stuff is just, even if you buy something nice, quote unquote, it just falls apart so soon. And then, so thrift shops are a great place for shoes. I mean, we have found like literally brand new pairs of shoes with the tags still on them for like $4 when we would have spent $50 on them at the store. Thrift shops also are great. Boys' pants are a little hard to come by, obviously, because boys go through pants so quickly. And then if you get them at the thrift shop, they're already going to be somewhat worn, particularly around the knees. I recommend getting well-made pants, usually like on a Black Friday or something like this online, where you've got, or Cyber Monday, is that what they call it? When they have those deep discounts and you can get the really well-made jeans and pants for maybe $10 each or $12 each, buy in bulk, then buy a couple sizes ahead, be planning for the future. But thrift shops also will have, even with thrift shops, it can add up, because $4 a shirt or something like this, that still adds up if you've got 6 children. So thrift shops will quite often at the end of the month have a discount day where everything is half off or something like this. Or they have, some of them have where, certain tag colors are half off that day. And so when I go to a thrift shop, I almost am always going to be clearance shopping, even at the thrift shop. So I'm going to be, I'll go in with the kids. I'll say, okay, the tag today is purple. You do not bring me something that's not purple. We are only buying purple things today. And the same if we go to like, I was going to say a Target, but I don't really go to Target anymore because of the whole transgender bathroom thing. If we go to, I can't even remember the name of the store. It used to be called Mervyn's. What is it called now? Oh my gosh. Mervyn's of California. Kohl's. A lot of those became Kohl's. If we go to Kohl's, that's how infrequently I go. I don't even know what it's called, but we do sometimes go to Kohl's to get new clothes, church clothes or something like this. Clearance rack. I tell the kids, don't even look at what's on the front. Don't even look. We go straight to the back. Straight to the back. I want to see the numbers 50 or 75. Okay. So there's that. Buy ahead for next season, right? So they spring comes around, they're putting all of their snowsuits, they're putting all of their coats, all that great stuff for like 75% off. Look at your daughter that's 4 years old, buy a size 5 or 6. Easy peasy. Put it in a bin, label it. It takes a little extra time, but that's the wonderful thing about being a mom and a stay-at-home mom is that you have a little bit of extra time to put forth that little extra effort that saves those pennies, and it adds up. And then just discount days, be watching in the paper for ads, and have an ongoing list in your bullet journal or your planner, ladies, of things that you need and things that you anticipate coming up. So right now it's June. So I'm always thinking about 3 months ahead as far as money goes. So 3 months ahead from now is we're going to be getting back to our homeschool, right? Fall's going to be coming and we're going to be getting back into it. And so I'm already looking at curriculum now, and I'm looking at what I would need to complete these curriculums. Do I need an online math program to go with this? Do I need these, certain books or workbooks or a globe or, whatever, compasses, whatever, maps? What are we doing? And I will start making a list, and I will start saying, okay, and then also, are there any registration fees that go along with homeschooling? What are we doing? Any co-ops this year? Am I going to be paying for that? And write it down and kind of have a long-term vision of some of those bigger things that are coming up. And then also, about twice a year, we have to make, a big, purchase of clothing usually for the kids, kind of, summer and winter, roughly speaking. And I kind of pencil that in. I'll say, okay, I'm going to need to spend about $200-300 coming up here pretty soon. And just be watching that and watching my bank account, watching the extra money, making sure that I'm not dipping into it for something spontaneous and fun, because I know, okay, 2-3 months, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to buy, right? So keep track of that. Ladies, learn how to cut hair. It's not that hard, and you don't have to be super fancy at it. And it might seem overwhelming, but you can get on YouTube and you can learn how to do it really well. You can learn how to do your own. I cut my own hair. Well, I don't really cut it much, but I trim it and layer it on my own. And I cut my husband's hair and my boy's hair. Every now and again, my husband will go out and get his hair cut. But for the most part, I do that. And, you just watch those YouTube videos, buy some good trimming shears, and you can do it easy peasy. And so about once a month-ish, I'll put on a movie. We'll set a chair in the living room with the towels under it, and I just line them up and we cut hair. And some moms, they just buzz their boys' heads almost bald. If you feel just too overwhelmed about cutting it, there's nothing wrong with that. But a pair of good shears, just on Amazon or even at Walmart, will cost you anywhere from $10 to $20. They will last through a lot of haircuts. And if you were to take your kids out, even to a discount place, you're going to be paying $15 a head. So learn to cut their hair. You'll save a ton of money that way. Let me check the chat. I'm coming up towards the end. Okay, Lord of the Edge says the idea behind WN surrogacy has to do with the idea that many women are refusing to bear children, or the possibility of only men surviving a race war. Okay, well, if that is your concern, yeah, I can understand that. But I would say that there are a lot of Eastern European kids that are adoptable. And I would recommend that before I would recommend surrogacy. I think it would actually be cheaper too. And I know people worry about the genetics if they're adoptable. Eastern Europeans, though, have some pretty good genetics, in my opinion. So I personally wouldn't be worried about that. If I had the money, definitely I would be in a couple years adopting kids, particularly from Eastern European countries. Okay. And then there's also just American kids that are adoptable too, that, if you're up on genetics and stuff like that, you can tell. You can tell which kids are going to have a better outcome and which aren't, which ones are just like, their environment isn't going to matter and it's going to be a big struggle. And if you're doing it specifically because you want to adopt children of yours, if you want more people of your same ethnic background around because you feel like there's going to be future tensions, I would recommend going and getting those kids from your background that are adoptable and raising them in a good and stable environment as much as you can, such that their genes can express themselves fully and develop, their attitudes and personality can develop in the most positive way possible. I guess. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. Okay. Okay, so then here's another little piece of advice. Don't think about what you can't do. Think about what you can do. So a lot of people will fall into the trap of being like, oh, well, I want that new dress. I wish we had a better car. I wish we had a bigger house. I wish we could go on a ski vacation. And that sort of thing. And so flip it around. Don't ever sit there thinking about what you can't do. You need to think about what you can do. So for example, when we lived in the desert years ago, two of my kids who have birthdays very close together, for a birthday trip, they really wanted to go play in snow. Well, I looked up our closest ski resort, and even to just do like inner tubing was like $50 a day or something per person. It was like insane. It would have cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars for my family. And so we got some garbage laid cans and other things to use for sleds. And we just drove up nearby to the ski resort, found a great place for the kids to play. And I mean, it was snow, so they didn't want to be out that long anyways because it's cold. And let them play for a couple of hours there and then drove home. So think about what you can do. Don't think about what you can't do. When you want to take a vacation, think about, what's close by to you that you haven't explored, what parks or museums or things like that. Learn to love what's right around you. Learn to really invest time and effort in caring, and don't look at it and be like, oh, I wish that I could go. Here's an example. When I lived in Utah, I would see things about the Biltmore Estate, and the Biltmore Estate is over on the east coast of the country. And I was like, well, that's lovely. And I'm just going to leave that thought there because there is no way I'm touring the Biltmore Estate anytime soon because it is all the way across the country. And there's no way I'm getting a family of 8 across the country plus paying admittance to go see a fancy manor house, right? So I just don't let my thoughts go there. I don't linger on it. I don't belabor it. I don't sit around and say, oh, poor me. What I do is I look and I say, the Biltmore house, that's lovely. What do I have that's similar around here? What could I go explore? And actually, where I was at in Utah at the time, had wonderful local homes that were settled by some of the first settlers that had come to the area that were available for touring. And no, were they a big estate that was so lovely as the Biltmore? No, but they were really fun. And I learned a lot and I had a really great time, and I had a great time with my kids. And it cost us basically no money. And so think about what you can do. Always have that positive outlook, particularly mom, because this is going to be your job to do, is have that positive outlook. So if your kids want to, I want to go to a water park for my birthday. Maybe you don't have water park kind of money. Tell them, honey, what if we ordered a really fancy slip and slide for like $30 off Amazon, or went and got it at the Walmart. We invite all your friends. We put on stack up some towels. Maybe we could even, put on a movie inside, have pretzels and chips and soda pop, and then put the slip and slide outside, and you guys can just have a blast. Maybe get some cans of shaving cream, right? That's really fun if y'all haven't done that. And again, go on Pinterest, go on Google. If you're not a creative person that can think these things up on your own, there's a mom somewhere who's thought of them. There is a mommy blogger that has thought of something low cost and fun, and your kids will have a blast. You could mix shaving cream in bowls and like make it different colors with food coloring and have like a pretend food fight with it. There is just so many things you can do. You can, just so much, you could put jam in squirt guns or something and just squirt each other and then hose yourselves down. When we bought our first home, it was on a little, it was a quarter acre, which was actually quite a lot of land for where we were. And there was a huge back section of the property that was just all dirt. And we were going to put a garden in there. And that was why we had bought that house, was to put in a big garden. Well, I thought, what would be really fun before we put the garden in is we have our kids just invite all their friends over. We take a hose and just hose down all this dirt, get it nice and wet, and have a mud party. And so that's what we did. We had a big mud party. So everybody wore their swim clothes. Even some of the grown-ups got into it. It was so fun. The kids loved it. They were out there for hours building mud things and just getting so messy. And I've got pictures where like you can't even tell it's a child. They're just like so covered in mud, and there's like one little eye sticking out. And we would hose them off, and then they'd run back and do it some more. And then at the very end, we just hose them off really thoroughly. Gotta check all those little crevices and cracks and get the Q-tips in the ears and things like that. So little attention to detail, but it wasn't really any more effort than going swimming. And it wasn't really it definitely was no more effort than going to the beach. It was no more effort than going swimming. Wasn't any messier in the long run than going swimming, because the dirt washed right out, put the swim trunks in the wash machine, whatever. And they just hosed off. Kids hose off really well. So they had a blast. They had a great time. So think about what you can do, not about what you can't do. Barter, trade, and find local discounts. I kind of already touched on that, so I think I'll just skip through that. And men. Okay, so women learn to cook and cut hair and to sew. Men learn some basic carpentry, gardening, and plumbing. Okay. If you don't know it already, that will save you a ton of time and money. And one of the things that, again, the Duggars, Jim Bob Duggar, the father, said that he likes to do is if they have a new project that they've never done before, like laying carpet or something like this, what he did in the past is he would hire somebody to do one room, and he'd observe them, right? He didn't go off and go get a coffee and be like, oh, okay, my hired man's going to do it. He watched how he did it. And then he said, okay, thank you for, laying the carpet in that room. I'm going to do the rest of the rooms. And nowadays, again, though, with YouTube, I mean, there's no reason that you can't learn almost anything that you want to learn. Gardening, plumbing, definitely there's going to be times when you're going to have to call a plumber or something like that. But even then, like the Duggars, they had their own snakes, the plumbing snakes for the really bad clogs in the toilet. And your toilet will get clogged a lot if you have a large family, just because, especially not even from waste, it gets clogged from tissue paper, because you got the little guys that love to go in there and shove tissue paper in there, or somebody drops a toy car in there or something, and then somebody piles tissue paper on top of it, and you don't know it's in there, and somebody goes to flush the toilet. Your toilets will be a big thing. Learn how to work on toilets. But they bought just a snake, And they used it so much, I believe the Duggar family, if I remember correctly, they had one for the upstairs and one for the downstairs. And, Jim Bob just knew how to snake that pipe, snake it. That'll save you like $100 calling a plumber if you know how to snake your own toilet. We got a super chat from D. Vielrat. Thank you. $5. And I don't know what that currency is. Euros? Is that euros? Thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate that. No comment with the super chat. So definitely, men, you want to know how to do things. Also, what you want to know is when you're buying a home, you want to be able to look things over and know that things are well made. And if they aren't well made, if the person that owned the house before did something kind of funny with it, with their own home repair, that it's easily fixable, or it's something you know how to handle. It's not something that's going to cost you a lot of money. That sort of thing. Hold on just a second. I am going to make somebody a moderator who needs to be a moderator. There we go. Alrighty. Anyway, so that's going to really help. So again, just really quickly, women, you want to know how to cook and cook in bulk. You want to know how to sew and how to cut hair. Men, you want to know some basic carpentry skills, gardening skills, and plumbing skills, basically maintenance stuff. And hey, it's even worth shadowing a maintenance man. If you want to spend a month of Saturdays shadowing a maintenance man, find somebody, could even be a hotel maintenance man, whatever, it doesn't matter. A maintenance man for an apartment, hotel, something. Call them up, say, hey, can I just shadow you and work for free for you for a month of Saturdays? And, or whatever it is. And, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would turn you down. A lot of maintenance guys would love a little bit of company along the way, as long as you're not getting in the way, as long as you're being like respectful, and listening to them. And you could learn a ton of stuff. You can learn a lot of basics if your dad didn't teach you those basics, or if you were raised by a single mom. So there's something else you can do. Yeah, okay. And then my last tip would be homeschool. And a lot of people are like, what? Doesn't that cost more money? Isn't public school free? You're all scratching your head. No, oh my gosh, homeschools. I've had a lot of friends that public school, and we saved so much money. Number one, I have lots of homeschooling videos, and I tell you how to kind of homeschool on the cheap. So check those out. But one of the things is that public schools now they charge you fees. There's like lab fees, art fees. I know a lot of my friends who have kids in high school, and their fees are like $300 to $500 a year for their kids to take band or whatever else. These public schools charge fees. And I have had friends just sit there and tell me, like, oh my gosh, our bill came in, it's $300. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have $300. We don't have it, and I don't know what we're going to do. And I've looked at that and gone like, oh my gosh, I homeschool my kid for less than that. My teenager, I homeschool for less than $300. That's pretty intense. And then also you've got gas going back and forth to the school every day. And then, extra meetings and things on top of it. Homeschooling you can do for very inexpensive, again, if you want to put in the effort. But even if you buy a lot of prepackaged curriculum, you're still going to save money in the long run. I've really noticed that. So it's not a huge expense if you put some time and effort into it. And there's so much for free now online. Khan Academy is a great resource I've talked about before, especially for the maths and sciences. Social studies, they're kind of liberal on, so keep an eye on that. But lots and lots and lots of classic literature and novels and science books and all that are all in the public domain. So you can just find so much. Somebody recently commented over on Twitter about Ambleside Online. I think it's .com or .org. And that is an entirely classics-based, basically free online curriculum for every grade. It's a lot of reading. It's a reading-based curriculum, but it has almost virtually every book, like 90% of the books they use are all available either free on audiobook or free in the public domain. So if you put $50 into a Kindle, you can use that program. You would need, you would just need a math program and like a couple of things here and there in addition to that. But you could do it for almost no money. Let's see. Yeah, I think that we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you guys for joining me today. I've got lots of subjects coming up in the future. I know that you guys have been tweeting at me and messaging me with your wants and desires, and I'm sorry that I don't get to them quicker. So definitely there is, let me look at my list here. So I know that just the financial one is just always one that people want me to do and do a lot. So I did that one and I will do it again. Maybe I'll just kind of try to do a financial thing about raising a big family on a low budget. Maybe I'll try to do that like every 6 months or so, but just don't be afraid of it. You'll figure it out. You're smart. You'll figure it out. I know if you're watching my channel, you're smart, so you'll figure it out. But I am going to do one about biology and culture, genetics versus culture. I think that is a subject that is kind of driving me crazy right now because people tend to be like all one or the other, and it's both. It's equally both. It's 100% both. I'm going to be talking about that pretty soon. I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything, and I am going to be doing about home scheduling, homeschool. So I'm going to be talking about, I've done a lot of like how I homeschool videos, but somebody particularly wanted to know about how I schedule my homeschooling. So I'll be doing another one of that. And oh my goodness, another super chat, Quebec. I don't know how to say your name, but 200. Thank you so much. That's so great. I'm just, oh my goodness. You're an amazing, very generous soul. He says, it's too late for me. I've been ruined by public school. Save yourselves and run. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. I'm overwhelmed by your generosity. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, you know, all of the money that I get, it is going right back into me growing and expanding my platform and being able to get the word out. Definitely. And I am so grateful for you guys. And I'm so grateful that you have taken some time in the middle of your week to spend some time with me here today. Hopefully I have given you some ideas. And mostly I hope that I have alleviated a little bit of maybe apprehension that you have about finances and big families. It works out. Like I've said, a lot of times my husband does not have any kind of fancy degree or fancy educational background at all. And we make it work. So I am very grateful for all of you guys that follow my channel and that appreciate my work. If you want to support my work, I always appreciate it. wifewithapurpose.com/support. And if you want to know where to find me on social media, I know that that's been a question. I do have imposters out there, and because Twitter took away my verification and my old account, a lot of you are not sure who I am, where I'm at. Always check the comment box in my latest videos. I almost always put links to my current social media. So I'm over at Twitter at Ayla Wife. If you want to follow me over there, I'm at Gab, Wife with a Purpose. I'm at Instagram, Wife with a Purpose. And I have a Facebook group if you want to request to join the group. And those are the social media platforms that I'm hanging out on most of the time. You're going to get most of my updates there. I'm writing at newcentralmedia.net. Check them out. Great news source. And I will definitely catch you guys later. Thank you so much. Bye.